Hiya horns, how are you all doing? Hope you're doing okay. Let's talk about murder. So I'm trying out a new background. Let me know what you think. I don't know how, because my room is such an awkward shape. I'm limited on filming places. So we're just trying out some things. So today's case, we're going to be talking about the Grindr Killer. So before we get into the case, I just want to give a disclaimer that I mean no disrespect to anybody mentioned in this video. This video is for educational purposes and everything mentioned in this video is just information that I have found on the internet that I have taken and put into one video. There are some content warnings for this case. There is going to be talk about drug use and also rape. So if that's anything that you guys are not comfortable with listening at the moment, I completely understand. Click off the video and hopefully I'll see you in another one. So this case takes place in Barking in the United Kingdom. Stephen Port was born February 22nd, 1975 in Southend-on-Sea, which is in southeastern Essex. When he was around 1 year old, him and his family moved to Dagenham, which is in East London, where his parents still live now. When he turned 16, he left school and went to an art college, but this proved to be too expensive for his parents, so he instead decided to train for 2 years as a chef. He found kitchen work in local businesses, events, weddings, until he found a job cooking for staff and drivers at a bus depot in West Ham. When he was in his mid-20s, that's when he came out to his family. And you know, his parents were supportive, he still lived with them, and he lived with them until his early 30s, and that's when he moved out into a flat in Barking, which this opened up many more opportunities for him. He had so much more freedom. He was able to have parties, he was able to have friends over, he was able to have boyfriends over. He just had so much freedom now that he was living on his own. It was said that Stephen had a strange childlike quality about him. You know, he would watch cartoons, he would go to children's toy shops alone and buy toys, and some of them he would place overlooking his bed. His behaviour became quite selfish. He would cheat on his partners, he was doing drugs. He worked as a male escort and eventually acted as a pimp for other men. He became a habitual user of GHB, which can be taken as a powder, but it's usually dissolved in water. And he was also a habitual user of a colourless liquid called GBL, which is drunk and then it turns into GHB in the body. In small doses, the drugs can leave you feeling euphoric, but in slightly larger doses, it can lead to unconsciousness or even death. It was at this time where social media started to rise pretty quickly, and this let Stephen, you know, he wasn't going out anywhere. He was just staying in and, you know, retreating to the online world. He joined, left, rejoined multiple social networks. He even sometimes used different names with his own picture, or even creating an entirely fictional identity online. So he was basically a catfish. He used dating sites to find sexual encounters, and these were typically young men in their early 20s. In the gay community, they're known as twinks, and he even dated a few of them. Some of the boyfriends, they were highly vulnerable young men, and they became prostitutes while in volatile relationships with Stephen. They were advertised on escort sites with Stephen's number as the contact number. In one of the escort profiles, some of the photos included photos of a young man who was naked, either asleep or unconscious on a bed. He regularly searched the internet for drug rape pornography. At least one of the online videos that he accessed had a storyline about drugs being slipped into someone's drink, and this was a fantasy that he brought to life. In early 2012, a student spent the night with Stephen after meeting him on the dating app Grindr. Stephen picked him up from the Barking station, and he thought that Stephen was, you know, quite polite, he was friendly. There was nothing that Stephen said or did that gave him the impression that this is a bad idea and I shouldn't do it, I'm in danger. There was nothing that raised any alarm bells. When they arrived at Stephen's flat, he put on an animated movie and offered the young man a small glass of wine. And the student described this wine to taste quite bitter, but he put that down to just the wine being cheap. But once he had finished the wine, he had noticed a sludge at the bottom of the glass, and he immediately started to feel dizzy and tired. And Stephen, he was like, why don't you just go lay down? Like, go and have a lay down in the bed. Like, make yourself feel better. So he did, and he immediately fell asleep as soon as he lay down on the bed. When he woke up, he realised that Stephen was raping him, but because of the drugs, he immediately fell back asleep, so he couldn't do anything. He couldn't stop it from happening. He later told the trial that he woke up feeling disorientated, but Stephen drove him back to the station and acted like nothing had happened. And this student, he felt very scared to ask or say anything about the night before, so he just went home. In early 2014, there was a Muslim boy in his early 20s, and he had never taken a sip of alcohol before, he had never done drugs before, and he had met Stephen through the Fit Lads website. They had met around 4 times and everything was completely fine, and it wasn't until the 5th meet that he was attacked. Stephen gave him a glass of clear liquid, claiming it was water, but this water was laced with drugs. And as soon as he drank it, he immediately fell asleep. He immediately went unconscious. He did not want to get the police involved because he was scared to let his family know about his sexuality because they didn't know that he was gay. And because there was no official allegations made against Stephen, both men were allowed to leave. Anthony Walgate was 23 and he was born and raised in Hull. He came to London to study fashion at the University of Middlesex. Anthony was contacted by a man through the Sleepy Boys website and he was offered £800 for him to stay the night. And of course, Anthony accepts. I don't know if it's Anthony or Anthony, so sorry if I go between the two. Anthony had occasionally been escorting since 2012, and he took his usual precautions. He let his friends know where he was. He also showed his friends a photo of the man that he was meeting in Barking. Anthony was drugged with GHB, and this made him unconscious. He was then raped and died from a GHB overdose. On Thursday the 19th of June 2014 at 4:18 a.m, the ambulance service received a call to report an incident on Cook Street in Barking. The caller had said, there's a young boy, looks like he's collapsed outside. They also said that it looks like he may have had a seizure or he's just drunk. When the paramedics and police arrived at the scene, they found Anthony sitting against a wall. There were no signs of struggle or injury, but police noticed that his top was pulled up, exposing his midriff. And if you don't know what a midriff is, it's the region of the front of the body between the chest and the waist. They also found a black holdall bag resting against him, and the bag held a dark brown bottle containing a small amount of liquid. I'm not sure what this liquid was, I couldn't find out what it was. And his mobile phone was missing. Stephen was the one to make the 999 call, and in a witness statement he told police that he came home around 4 a.m. after working a night shift to find a man propped up against his door, and he tried to ruse him by slapping him across the face. He said that he made a gurgling sound and then he propped him up against the wall and called for an ambulance before going inside and falling asleep. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play you a section of the 999 call because it's completely different to what he said in his witness statement.
Looks like you've collapsed or had a seizure or something. Just always just drunk. But yeah.
What's the telephone number you're calling from?
I'm just pulled up in the car. I've got to get my car on the parking.
That's alright, don't worry about that. What's the telephone number you're calling from? Hello? Hello, the ambulance service. Well, I can't be there. Just confirm the location.
Oh, I'm just driven away now.
So, were you passing by in your car?
Yes.
Okay, and you've drove past now, you're no longer there.
That's right.
How old did he look roughly, sir?
So as you can hear, he starts off by saying that, you know, he saw this guy, he looked like he was having a seizure or maybe he was just drunk. And then he goes on to say that he was driving past. He basically told the police two separate stories in the 999 call. It just doesn't make sense to me. Because to me, if I heard that, that would be a massive red flag, because he changed his story. It doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, he was lying. I spilled coffee! Fucking hell! Obviously, Stephen was lying, and police found that Anthony had been hired by Stephen as an escort. And Stephen was arrested on the 26th of June 2014 for perverting the course of justice. He was also suspected of taking Anthony's phone, because that was missing, and he denied having any knowledge of the phone or where the phone was. They interviewed him over 2 days, and he stuck to his original story, but he later changed his story and said that he contacted Walgate through an escort site. According to Stephen, Anthony had come to his flat to take some drugs that Stephen had bought. He then said that they had sex twice, and then Anthony started to feel really tired when he was leaving. He told police that he left Anthony sleeping while he went to work, but when he came home, Anthony was still in a deep sleep. When he returned from work, he came home, he went to bed, but then he woke up at around 3 a.m. and started to panic when Anthony was rigid. He carried Anthony outside before fetching his bag. He was worried that, quote, "they're gonna think I murdered him or something." I wonder why, babe. I wonder why. Police searched Stephen's flat and seized his laptop, and they also took some DNA samples. But the police believed this case to not be suspicious, so it was never treated as a murder. The police are going to really infuriate you in this case, by the way. Just to let you know. Just to give you a heads up. Yeah, the police they did not do their job properly in this case at all. Police did not examine Stephen's laptop even after Anthony's family asked the police to do so. If they did, they probably would have been able to convict him a lot sooner and save the lives of other people, but the police just didn't do their job. On June 13th, 2014, that's when Stephen first accessed Anthony's escort profile, and within minutes he had searched a lot of pornography websites. A few of the terms that he had searched after viewing his profile included sleeping boy, unconscious boys, drugged and raped, taking date rape drug, gay teen knocked out raped, and guy raped and tortured young nude boy. So Anthony's friends, they didn't think that this case was being taken seriously, so they pressured the police to do more. They would ask the police things like, have you looked through his laptop? And the police just responded with, that's just an expensive procedure to do that. It seemed like the police only cared about money in this case, and they wouldn't spend the money to solve a murder. Every time they asked the police to do something, they responded with, we're going to, and then nothing happened. They never did anything. And every time they had called the police officer that was dealing with the case at the time, he was either not there or someone would take a message and they would say that he would give them a call back, and they never received a call back. This next section, I'm really gonna butcher names and I am so sorry. I just want to apologize now. Gabriel Kavari was a Slovakian who moved to London in 2014 from Spain, where he was living with his boyfriend, Thierry Amodio. I apologize if I said that wrong. He struggled to find a place to live until he met John Pape, who invited him to stay in his spare room in his flat in South London. And, they spent quite a lot of time together and they became really good friends. And after spending several weeks with John, Gabriel told him that he had found another place to stay and that he was leaving. John insisted that Gabriel stayed. It wasn't a problem. They were good friends anyway. But Gabriel wanted to move on. He just wanted to, have a new place to stay. On August 23rd, 2014, Gabriel moved out of John's flat. And 3 days later, John messaged Gabriel asking how he was doing, how it was up and barking, but he never received a response. On the day that he moved out, Gabriel sent a message of a Google Maps location showing where he was staying to another friend. This Location was Cook Street, Barking. 2 days later, his friend received a message from Gabriel saying, "I'm fine," smiley face. And this was the last message that he ever received from Gabriel. So Ryan Edwards. Ryan Edwards was Stephen's neighbor, and they eventually became really good friends. But the more drugs that Stephen was taking, the less time that they spent together. So they wasn't seeing each other a lot, and they kind of drifted, but they were still like friends. You know, those kind of friendships that, like, you don't see them, but you're friends. On the 24th of August, 2014, Stephen sent a message inviting Ryan to come and meet his, quote, new Slovakian twink flatmate. Ryan came over and he briefly met Gabriel, and the next day he received a message off Gabriel saying, quote, "Stephen is not a nice person." Clearly, something has happened to make Gabriel so upset with Stephen, because everything was fine when Ryan was there. The following day, Ryan decided to message Stephen to ask how Gabriel was and how he was doing. And Stephen said he had gone to stay with another local guy, some soldier guy he had been chatting to online. On the morning of the 28th of August, 2014, Barbara Denham was walking her dog through a church when she came across the body of Gabriel Cavari. He was found wearing sunglasses, and there was also 2 bags found with him which held his things. His clothing was also pulled up to reveal his midriff, just the same as Anthony Walgate was. Police immediately tell John Pape because they were good friends, they were living together. John couldn't believe it. He googled the report of Gabriel's death and came across another unexplained death. John just thought how similar Gabriel's death was to this unexplained death he had come across online. He said he remembered looking how close St. Margaret's Church was to Cook Street, and this set off alarm bells for John. Within the next couple of days, John contacted Gabriel's former boyfriend, Theory, on Facebook, expressing his concerns about his death and saying that he might have been murdered, and that he wants to do something. He wants to figure out what's happening because the police aren't doing anything. Theory conducted his own research and came across someone called John Luck, who had recently started following Gabriel on Facebook. John Luck was surprised to hear of Gabriel's passing and said that they had spent 2 nights together around August 22nd, but then he was collected by a older Irish man called Tony, who drives a green Toyota. Theory kept in contact with John Luck and asked him if there was any more information that he could give him. On September 19th, John Luck said he had found Tony and messaged Theory saying, quote, "I texted him and asked what happened to Gabe, and he said he left with a young guy about his age named Dan, and they was heading to a party/orgy in Barking. Dan is tall, light brown hair," he said, "looks similar to Gabe, just a bit taller, very slim. When I told him Gabe is dead, he said he don't want anything to do with it, leave him alone." John described these parties as places where older men, quote, "get young guys so high that they can just rape them." 2 days after this, Theory messaged John Luck to say that the police had called him to tell him of Dan's death. And John was like, quote, "Please don't let them arrest me. I will try find as much info as I can to help you. Please let me know if you have any more info from the police." The following morning, John Luck suggested that maybe Dan knew something about Gabriel's death or had something to do with Gabriel's death and couldn't live with the guilt or something like that. The detective replied to emails sent by Theory, previously stating that the news on the Barking and Dagenham Post is nothing about Gabriel or Daniel. Theory kept asking the detective to contact John Luck, and it took 3 days to get a response. The detective said that they had heard nothing from John Luck, but they had never attempted to contact John Luck, and John Luck never attempted to contact the detective. If they had tried to contact him or traced his profile on Facebook, they would have found Stephen Port. Daniel Whitworth was a 21-year-old from Gravesend, Kent. His body was found in the same spot as Gabriel's on the morning of 20th of September 2014, only hours after John Luck had first mentioned Dan. He was sitting against the graveyard wall on top of a blue bed sheet, and his clothes was pulled up again like the others, and it gave the impression that he was dragged just like the others. His mobile phone was missing, and later tests showed that A small brown bottle was found with him containing GHB. In his left hand, they found a suicide note. It claimed responsibility for the death of Gabriel. This is what the suicide note said. I am sorry to everyone, mainly my family, but I can't go on anymore. I took the life of my friend Gabriel Klein. We was just having some fun at a mate's place and I got carried away and gave him an extra shot of G. I didn't notice while we were having sex that he had stopped breathing. I tried everything to get him to breathe again, but it was too late. It was an accident. But I blame myself for what happened, and I didn't tell my family I went out. I know I would go to prison if I go to the police, and I can't do that to my family. And at least this way, I can at least be with Gabriel again. I hope he will forgive me. BTW. Please do not blame the guy I was with last night. We only had sex, then I left. He knows nothing of what I have done. I have taken that G I have left with some sleeping pills, so if it does kill me, it's what I deserve. Feeling dizzy now, as took 10 minutes ago, so hoping you understand my writing. I dropped my phone on the way here, so it should be in the grass somewhere. Sorry everyone, love always, Daniel PW. To me, this suicide note just seems fake right off the bat, because he's saying stuff like, oh, don't blame the guy I was with last night, he has nothing to do with it. It just seems like Steven's trying to cover his tracks, because why would the police question the guy he was with last night anyway if he was confessing to a murder? Because the suicide note, he's confessing to a murder, and that's why he's committed suicide. The police would just put that down as a suicide and move on. Do you know what I mean? Daniel was an ambitious young chef and he was on his way to creating a good career for himself. He lived in Kent with his long-term boyfriend, Ricky, and it was Ricky who raised alarms when Daniel didn't return home. Those who knew Daniel didn't believe him to be suicidal nor be able to kill someone, but the police, they deemed this case to not be suspicious and accepted the suicide note at face value. To me, this case was just suspicious anyway because of the blue bedsheet. The police found Steven's DNA on the blue bedsheet, but still did nothing to close the case. They just said, oh, it's not suspicious, we're just gonna put it down as a suicide. Yeah. But they also found Steven's DNA on Daniel's clothes, on the suicide note. It very clearly was suspicious, but the police just said, no, it's not suspicious, it was a suicide. It was a suicide, guys. It wasn't a murder. No. They already had so much evidence against Steven, but did nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It infuriates me. It infuriates me. Steven had met Daniel through the Fit Lads website and invited him to his flat for a drink before heading out to dinner, so Daniel could, quote, get to know me a bit so you know I'm not some psycho. If someone said that to me, I'd be running. I'd be like, you're defo a psycho, babes, I'm leaving. Daniel was last seen by a colleague in Canary Wharf on the 18th of September and was said that he was going to meet some friends in Barking. And just like Anthony and Gabriel, Daniel was found to have died of a GHB overdose. Tests also showed Daniel to have taken sleeping pills, which corresponded to the suicide note, which led police to believe that the suicide note was real. Daniel was found with bruising below both armpits, which was most likely caused prior to his death. The bruising looks like it was caused by someone manhandling his body. Senior Barking and Dagenham detective DCI Tony Kirk told the local paper that Gabriel and Daniel's death was unusual and slightly confusing, but it wasn't suspicious. John Pape said that he felt like he had a moral responsibility to put pressure onto the police because he felt like he had hit a brick wall with them. He spoke to an LGBT anti-violence charity who told the police about John's concerns, and the police told them that one death was a self-administered overdose and the other was a suicide. John also spoke to a campaigner called Peter Tatchell who advised John to talk to Pink News, which is a gay newspaper, but they decided not to run the story because the police confirmed that they were not suspicious deaths. John was doing everything and anything he could to find as much information as he could on what had happened to these boys. He just believed that something bigger was going on than what the police were saying, and he just wanted to see justice for the ones that had died. In January 2015, Stephen was charged with perverting the course of justice for lying about the circumstances of Anthony Wargate's death. He pleaded guilty in Snaresbrook Crown Court in February and was sentenced to 8 months imprisonment. Anthony's friends were there to see Stephen convicted, and they spoke to the police after, saying that they didn't think that the police were doing enough. The police basically told them that only 2 people know what happened. One of them is dead and the other isn't going to say. So they know it was a murder, they just chose not to do anything. The police officer they spoke to had kind of an attitude towards Anthony's friends and said, quote, "Look, China, we have done all that we can do." And to Anthony's friends, this felt like it was just the police telling them to shut up and to leave it alone. So Stephen was charged to 8 months in prison, but he only served 2 months. The police had multiple opportunities to test evidence. They could have tested the bed sheets, they could have tested the suicide note, messages on the phones. They had so many opportunities to try and catch Stephen, but they didn't. They just didn't test anything. So Stephen killed a 4th man. Jack Taylor was a 25-year-old from Dagenham, and he was a forklift truck driver. Jack had multiple girlfriends because he wasn't openly gay, so he used the app Grindr to meet men. That was his way of meeting men. Secretly, I guess. On September 13th, 2015, Jack was having a fun night. He was drinking, he was at his local social club, he was just having a good night. He spent some time going through profiles on Grindr, and a little before 2 a.m, he had come across Stephen Port's profile, and they decided to meet at Barking Station. Within the next 36 hours, Jack was found dead. His body was found on the other side of the graveyard wall from where Gabriel and Daniel's body were found. And just like the others, his shirt was pulled up, his phone was missing, but this time they found a syringe in one of his pockets. The police didn't think this as suspicious and treated it as a self-inflicted overdose. His family didn't accept this as the cause of death because Jack was very, very against drugs. He was very anti-drugs, and they didn't believe that a drug overdose was what killed him. They told the police this, but the police suggested that he was probably just anti-drugs so they wouldn't try and stop him from taking drugs. So the family started their own investigation, and Jack's family are kind of the ones that solved this case. They went through where Jack had been the whole evening, who he last spoke to, the area where he was found. The area where he was found was very known for drugs. They even went on the internet and searched the area and came across the other victims that were found in the same place. They already knew that Jack wasn't a drug user, so they went through where all of the boys were from, and they wrote down similarities and then compared them to Jack, and they took this to the police, and at first it was obviously discarded. The police didn't care, they didn't want to hear it, they just was like, no, case closed, the case is done. It's done, it was a suicide. Everything the family gave the police just said no and did nothing to further the investigation. It was like they didn't care. They believed that the boys weren't linked in any way. While the family were at the police station, the police stated that there was CCTV evidence of Jack walking down a street with a man just hours before his death. His family asked for the CCTV footage so they could get it on newspapers, on TVs, to see if anybody had any information or even knew who this man was. But police said that it was unlikely to be a possibility because the death was not suspicious. On the 13th of October 2015, the Met issued a CCTV image of Jack Taylor walking near Barking Station with a tall blonde man. Police received several calls, and one call was from a Barking and Dagenham police officer who realised that the man in the photo was someone that they already knew. It was Stephen Port. On October 15th, 2015, the police arrest Stephen on suspicion of causing the deaths of 4 young men by administering poison. Same day, the case was passed from police in Barking to a team of detectives led by DCI Tim Duffield from the Met's main homicide and major crime command. Stephen was interviewed over the next 4 days and kept to his original story about Anthony Wargate's death and denied knowing the other men, and he also denied ever using GHB. He did tell police that he met Daniel Whitworth at sex parties which were held by a drug dealer from East London, but he denied everything else regarding Daniel, including the suicide note. On the 18th of October 2015, Stephen Port was charged with 4 counts of murder. The media coverage from this case brought 8 men forward who described being drugged, raped, and sexually assaulted at Port's flat after meeting him online. All the men's accounts were so similar. Stephen spiked their drinks, or he injected them with a small syringe, which is the type of syringe to give children medicine. At his trial, Stephen was convicted of several sexual assault offences against 7 of the men. This included 4 counts of rape, but he was acquitted of 1 charge of rape. He was also acquitted of all charges against the 8th man. A handwriting expert compared the suicide note to a sample of Daniel's handwriting and confirmed that Daniel was not the one to write it, but it was in fact Stephen. At his trial, Stephen looked completely different to his online identity. He was fit, he was masculine, he had muscles, he regularly went to the gym. It was said that he looked pale-faced, soberly dressed, and appearing older than his 41 years. Some mornings of the trial, he would wave at his legal team and smiling as he did so, and throughout the entire trial, he never looked at the families of the deceased. While he was in the witness box, he constantly mumbled and was constantly being asked to speak up so everyone in the court could hear him. Police also found a mobile phone that belonged to Stephen, which had 83 homemade sex videos of him and others having sex with unconscious men. But when asked about these videos, he said it was simply the end of quite a few hours of normal sex. He eventually admitted to lying to the police about the deaths of the 4 men that he killed. He explained it by saying, quote, "The truth sounded like a lie, so I lied to make it sound like the truth." DCI Tim Duffield, who led the successful investigation, said that Stephen was one of the most dangerous people he has ever encountered. To this day, Stephen has never shown any kind of remorse, which I've noticed is kind of a pattern with serial killers. They never really show remorse for what they've done. A lot of people had different opinions for how the police treat this case. A lot of people thought it was homophobia, and that was the reason why it was not suspicious all the time. And that is the case of Stephen Port. He was something. This case really infuriates me because the police had so many opportunities to close the case and save lives of people, but they just didn't. They just chose not to. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more, and let me know what case you want to see next. Leave it in the comments and I might do it for my next one. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, I hope you did. I hope you did. And I will see you in my next one. Okay, bye. What you gonna do?